Mass shootings are one of the most terrible of social ills that American society faces. Understanding them has proven to be a very serious challenge. I'm Jason Unruhe, and this is Mao's Rebel News. If you're interested in Marxist news and political commentary, then please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so that you won't miss a single video. One of the greatest problems of the United States is its preponderance of mass shootings. However, other countries are not immune. That is, when an individual goes out into the public and uses a gun to kill or attempt to kill numerous people. Thus far, mass shootings have risen over the past 2 decades, and this trend seems as though it will continue. If you watch television in the United States, you might start getting the impression that you see a news story about a mass shooting every single day. And you'd be right. As of November 15th of this year, there has been 622 mass shootings, which is 2.15 mass shootings per day as compiled by the mass shooter tracking website. The data compiled shows that this trend is actually increasing, and as capitalism continues to evolve and its corresponding alienation, the product of that alienation, mass shootings, will continue to grow as well. In 1967, only 6 people died because of mass shootings. In 2017, a record 108 people died as a result. There have been unique years in which the deaths were unusually high, but the overall trend has been a steady increase since the mid-1960s. In the 1970s, there was a 5-year rolling average of 8.2 deaths, while later there was a 5-year rolling average of 45.6 deaths. What's even more significant is the fact that the 5 most deadly mass shootings of the past 120 years have occurred all in the past decade. Of course, the United States is not the only country to experience mass shootings. Other countries experience them as well. In fact, if you look at mass shootings per capita, you'll find that Norway is the worst for them. According to the Crime Prevention Research Center from 2009 to 2015, there were 1.88 annual deaths per million people from mass public shootings. I think the primary cause of this is probably Anders Breivik. It should be noted that the Crime Prevention Research Center is a pro-gun lobby, and their findings have come under some scrutiny. However, me personally, I find them fairly reliable. So the US may not be the worst in all categories for mass shootings, but they certainly do have the most of them. And of mass shootings, the United States is certainly the most iconic for them. In fact, shooting people and stuff in general is a very American social phenomenon, a part of the American way of life, if you will. Their media is constantly filled with images of violence. Hollywood alone would be aghast at the idea of releasing movies without any violence in them at all. Even its pro-establishment propaganda is heavily infused with violence, particularly with promoting the system's justification in the use of it. Violence in America is everywhere. So the question is, what causes mass shootings? Well, there seems to be only one real consensus among psychiatric academics, and that is mental illness is not the cause, which sounds very strange to the average layman American who really feels like this probably is the case, but it most certainly is not. The data certainly supports this. Psychological illness that causes a person to engage in erratic or delusional behavior does not have any significant impact on mass shootings. What is notable is that the majority did have suicidal urges. Mass shootings are by their very nature suicidal acts. They are intended to be the final act of one's life. Afterwards, they intend to either die or be imprisoned for the rest of their life. They know this is going to happen, and they have accepted it as the consequences of their actions, which does demonstrate that increased legal consequences will have no effect on shooters. The mainstream liberal discourse has been to blame the gun, that somehow by merely the act of owning a gun means that you are going to go out and commit a mass shooting. This is, of course, nonsense. You cannot attribute social phenomena to an inanimate object. And in fact, Marx does describe this kind of thinking in a section in his work on commodity fetishism. The original meaning fetishism has to do with the attribution of supernatural powers to inanimate objects. This is one of Marx's aspects of fetishism. Marx described this when responding to Karl. He said that the application of supernatural powers to inanimate objects was the religion of sensuous appetites. He proposed that desires fooled the worshipper into thinking that the object will reveal its hidden nature to satisfy the prayers of the worshipper. This is the same way society can perceive someone as to be of a higher status or social superior by simply owning the most fashionable clothes. The idea that somebody will shoot another person simply because they own a firearm, or that firearms are the causes of mass shootings, is simply nonsense. For one person to shoot another, they must first want to shoot another person. It is understanding this want that allows us to understand why mass shootings happen. I can think of no better explanation for such public indiscriminate violence than alienation. It's a social phenomenon in which a person or persons become disconnected from the rest of society and themselves. They become inundated with manifestations like isolation, meaninglessness, self-estrangement, and powerlessness. These can boil over and cause extreme behaviors in one experiencing them enough to a great degree. Our modern capitalist society does leave the worker in a powerless state due to our relationship to the means of production. We do not control the product of our labor, nor do we experience its consumption of satisfying a need or want. I go into this much further in my previous video on capitalist alienation. American capitalist culture is horrifying from a sociologist's point of view. The entire system is practically a death cult. People are programmed to hate each other. Religion serves as an utterly inhuman, ugly control mechanism that also makes fortunes. Glorifications of wealth over substance of character is at the very heart of society. It permeates its justification for the treatment of people and even forms the basis for their Protestant versions of Christianity. Mental illness is skyrocketing. Society is extremely divided. Extremists are becoming more commonplace. The social fabric of society is fracturing, and capitalism is the cause. People feel utterly powerless to have any effect on society, which is why the majority of those able to vote simply don't. People constantly complain that life is just working to get money and then you die. The rat race is a common expression. Such a life is devoid of meaning. People don't feel connected to each other. They see them as competition. Many see their existence as an inconvenience. Even worse, some see others as a source of conspiracy against the usually blaming for them for why they feel so terrible. A good old case of the dialectic, where a quantity will eventually evolve into a good old quantity, turning someone from a regular person into the kind of person that would carry out a mass shooting, or at the very least, engage in some kind of extremist activity. The subject feels so alienated that they think nothing matters, and begin blaming others for how they feel. They themselves usually don't do anything to cause the alienation. But there are always exceptions. Resentment towards not feeling good enough and being powerless to change that will manifest as anger, because they do not understand the social economic forces behind their situation. All they see is that it's not their fault, so it must be someone else's. Since there is no single other to blame, they see everyone as potentially being in on it. Being powerless against a perceived conspiracy, consciously or unconsciously, leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate to desperate, violent action. And voila, the kind of person who has alienation has now transformed into the kind of person that would carry out mass shootings. Now, of course, this is an oversimplification, and there are unique circumstances to each mass shooting that are impossible to go into for this video, but this certainly does give you the gist of how alienation is, in my opinion, probably the very direct cause of mass shootings in America. They definitely do spring from alienation. Well, that'll do it for this video. I hope it gave you some kind of insight into alienation and even into some sociology. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. And if you would like to see more content like this in the future, please consider going to my Patreon and contributing a monthly donation. Even something as simple as a single $1 a month goes a long way to help making videos like this. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.